Howdy people, how are you guys doing? Welcome on our every Thursday taproom session, and this one will be not really traditional. Well, first of all, it's called the answer to the ultimate questions. So the trick here will be highlighted a little bit later. For those ones who are new here, and not everybody here are new, I see like few names that I'm familiar with. Hi, Jeff. How are you doing? How is Steve doing? Hi, Mark. Paul, and well, that's it actually. So for the rest of the guys, the every Thursday tap room was initiated by StarWind. This is not something like traditional webinar. That's why we didn't call it actually webinar. This is the place. This is a friendly place where you can, just sit back, relax, and ask the questions that you want, when in the way that you want, like without sir or mister or something. Let's consider each other like friends. What I can promise you right now is that if anybody of you will have like a really great question that deserves to be discussed online, I will gladly unmute the person who asked it and we will have the discussion. Okay, so let me quickly, before we'll dive into the questions, let me just quickly make the introduction of myself. My name is Anatoly Belchinsky. You guys can call me Tony. I'm heading the support department at StarWind Software Incorporated, and I'm with StarWind for the last like 6 years. I'm kind of old here. My preferred drink is Scotch and Cointreau. And also, I have my colleague with me. His name is Oles. He is a support engineer at StarWind Software for almost half of a year. He's a really nice person actually, and surprise, surprise, he's a really great gamer. So, Oles.
Hello, guys. I'm glad to be here and provide you with some answers, and I think we're gonna have a great time spent here. So, yeah, well, my introduction would be that I'm half a year with StarWind. I really enjoy this company and everything here. I enjoy answering questions. I enjoy doing stuff on environment and so on. And about drinks, I believe my favorite ones is Rome and beer. Well, not together, obviously.
Well, it's not obvious. Sometimes we're all making mistakes. Okay, so let's move forward. The next slide is going to be the agenda, but before we'll go to agenda, I'd like to ask you guys to confirm that you guys actually hear us and the picture is okay. Right now, you should see my shiny birdie face. So if you guys hear us well and see us well, please let us know by typing the quick okay message to the questionnaire chat box. I'll give you some time to do that. Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate it a lot. So, agenda for today. For aperitif, bitter, main drink, and the after party, we will have the answers to all the ultimate questions that you may have about the StarWind. Feel free to ask anything that you would like to ask. I mean, the question can be not only like deeply technical, it can go to marketing aspects, it can go to sales aspects. Well, right now, I can assure you that I will not give you some like pricing numbers, but I can give you the pricing model. So making a long story short, just ask what you want, even if it's not StarWind related. We can talk about the movies. By the way, that is actually what we did before with Alice what meetings before meeting started. And by the way, you know how we call Alice when he is getting some servers into his arms and getting from one room to another hardware-less. Okay, so the next slide. 42. Right now you can actually start asking all the questions, and I'll give you the brief information where the 42 comes from. So for those of you who haven't watched the Hacker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's actually the book with the movie. Let's not talk about the quality of the movie probably. So there was a planet in this movie. The citizens of this planet created a really huge computer. The main purpose of it was to calculate the ultimate answer to the question. And it took like 1,000 years to calculate it. And after the and on the time when the answer was calculated, all the citizens gathered in front of the big flat screen of the server, and there was a countdown timer like 3, 2, 1, and then the answer appeared, and the answer was, surprise, surprise, 42. And well, citizens were like kind of surprised and asked like, what? Okay, what is the question then? And the computer said, I need another 1,000 years to give you the answer to the question. Okay, so do we have any questions that are asked?
Yes, we actually have some. And the first one is what are StarWind recommendations in terms of underlying storage for it?
Okay, great. That's a great question. Thank you. So let's start with the fact that StarWind is actually the hardware agnostic, and that basically means that you can use any underlying storage that you want. The only requirement that StarWind has to the underlying storage is it should have the NTFS partition and the letter assigned to the volume. Regarding the RAID recommendations, again, use anything that you want. Well, obviously the RAID 10 is the best scenario in my opinion, in my professional opinion, but it should be considered as the last option due to one really obvious reason. And the reason is that RAID 10 is really expensive. I mean, it consumes 4 disks to give for the 1 disk usable capacity. So that's why I'm usually starting with like, why can't you choose the RAID 0? I mean, you want redundancy, you've got the redundancy with StarWind. It has the synchronous replication. Moreover, it has three-way synchronous replication. If that is not an option, okay, like go if you want like enough of redundancy, increase the level of redundancy. Why can't you go with the RAID 1? Sometimes people are saying that the RAID 1 is not enough because it doesn't give enough of teeth. Then we are moving to RAID 5 and RAID 6, which is good for the read. It had got the redundancy, but it's, well, let's be honest, it's awful for the write operation speed processing. And only if that is not an option, then we are moving to the RAID 10. So I'm pretty sure that that should address your questions. Okay, so well, again, if not, just drop the quick message to the question box and we'll address it. Les, anything else?
Yeah, here is another great question, which is asked about our inline deduplication, about StarWind and what are recommendations for that. And I'd say that, first of all, inline deduplication is used on LSFS, which is log structured file system, and we actually recommended using on virtual machines because the point of deduplication as it's removing the same copies of same data, and I mean, it free up some space. So when there is a big sequential write to a disk, when there are many random writes to a disk, many small random writes, which virtual machines are generating all the time, the LSFS, it makes a big sequential block and writes on the drive, which is extremely increasing performance and also deduplication it increases performance and frees up some space, because when there are like 20 virtual machines which are running same operation system, they are usually generating some same writes on a drive. And then those same writes with an inline deduplication, they are all deleted and there is one actual write. And for that information which was written, for all other virtual machines are provided with a link to that written information. And this is the way how we free up space with LSFS. But there is also a downside, and we have a great question which is often asked, is why LSFS requires 3 times more space than a usual image file? And this is a great question, and it is normal because sometimes people think that it is a bug, but it is not a bug. Uh, my friend Anatoly here, he just uh, he just wrote OLS FS, and yeah, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, so it's like a name for OLS and then FS. Regarding addressing your like particular specific deeply technical part of the question, StarWind itself provides the inline deduplication, which is, it works inline. It deduplicates the data before it's written to the disk. And that is usually considered for people as the VM-centric deduplication type. So feel free to use it to store the virtual machines themselves. And about the backups, usually people are using the offline deduplication to store the backups. Well, obviously backups are the cold data, so no need to, duplicate them right now, thus consuming the CPU and the random access memory. So the trick here is that StarWind itself doesn't have the offline deduplication, but since it runs on top of the Windows server, it's possible to enable the offline deduplication of Microsoft on the partitions on the volumes where the StarWind is actually installed, thus getting the offline deduplication into the play. And that is actually a good question. If there are any chance that we can continue talking about it, I will probably even unmute Ryan, who asked this question. So thank you, Ryan. Let's move to the next question. So, LSFS, what do we have next?
I was about to say about LSFS, which requires 3 times more space, and this is because it has a logging per each write operation on the drive, and that logging requires space. And eventually, in upcoming StarWind features, we'll have a possibility to start that device from last point. So like you're logging your write operation, and if something went wrong, you can like jump one step back on previous write operation and start on from it. It's like a snapshot, but a snapshot on more physical level. I think, yeah, that's it. This is why it requires 3 times more space because of write operation logging.
I think it will be a good idea if you could expand it a little bit and say if it's gonna be possible to make this number a little bit lower.
Yes, there are actually 2 methods of making this number lower. The first one would be is to manually set the amount of LSFS expansion lower by it doesn't even matter how do you do it, but you can do it, and then you enable offline Windows deduplication to help LSFS with those with that data, which has to be written over. And the second way for it, you actually don't have to do anything because when your virtual machines are stopping to write something on your drives, when there is no client requests and so on, the LSFS is running a background scrubber, which is called inline deduplication, not the inline deduplication, but some sort of deduplication which is inside of a device, and we inside our company call it scrubber, and then it free up some space. Because like we had a test on our personal environment, and we've got LSFS device 1 TB size filled up, and then we left it for an hour, and we got a half a terabyte free space just by doing nothing. Yeah, and there is another thing about LSFS, which is speed, which provides us with some speed, and I've already said that that speed is gained by sequential writes, which LSFS makes out of small blocks. Uh, sorry.
Okay, and the thing that I'd like to add about the LSFS is, people usually like to hear the numbers and that something allows to achieve. So on the experience of our shy guy, he worked with the one of our users who had 15K SAS-based system that allowed to achieve like 700 of IOPS. And after LSFS device was configured on top of that, the speed got up to 7,000 of IOPS, so 10 times increase. And well, in my opinion, that is a really significant number, and especially considering that the test that was conducted haven't even involved any caching. So it was just like pure LSFS and pure disks, face to face. Okay, so that was actually a great question, and probably Ales want to add something.
No, actually, I don't want to add anything. I just want to say that I see another awesome question which Paul asked. It's about, is StarWind a Hyper-V solution only? What do you think about it, Anatoly?
Well, it's native to Hyper-V because it's installed on the parent partition of the Hyper-V. By the way, let me know if you have any problems with understanding what the parent partition is. It's kind of user test. I'll appreciate it. So it's native to the Hyper-V. It has a benefit from the Hyper-V. I mean, the Hyper-V have benefits from using StarWind. But no, it's not Hyper-V only. It's anything only. Which means that StarWind can be used for any application, any client. So VMware, be my guest, then server, please, some kind of Oracle databases, you're always welcomed. Walt Disney actually used us for storing some kind of media content that was later on streamed online. Well, I have no idea why exactly U.S. Army used us for. Probably that's even a good news. Canon, probably something media specific. I mean, anything can use StarWind, um, which makes Hyper-V guys is that StarWind installs on the same physical operation system where the Hyper-V is running. So, well, I hope that addresses your question. So, thank you, Paul.
Uh, and yeah, there's another question which Jeff asked saying that L2 cache was disabled for LSFS in recent build, and is it better to use LSFS without L2 cache on SATA drives or regular image file with L2 flash cache? And the thing is that today we have released our latest build, which has L2 cache enabled on everything. So right now you're free to use L2 cache on any image and everything's going to be okay. Uh,
Well, probably it's a good idea to send over Jeff the link to download and the release notes. Alice, can you do it today, please?
I can do it right now.
Awesome. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay, so again, as Alice said, feel free to use LSFS with L2 caching. Okay, so let's move to the next question that we have from Paul. Quoting, I'm about to reformat Hyper-V cluster to VMware 5 and retire outdated SCSI share storage. What is your recommended solution using your product? Well, tendency of the market tells me to tell you to use it in the hyper-converged manner, and I'm pretty sure that it's actually a good idea. So basically, you will have the VMware 5, and you will run the StarWind as a virtual machine of the VMware. We actually have the guides regarding the recommendation, step-by-step configuration guide, to make the long story short. If you're interested in getting it, just email me directly. I'm gonna type in my short email into the question box and send it to all right now. So if you have any questions after this tap room, you're always welcomed in my mailbox. Okay, so let's move to the next question. The question from Harold, Alice, I think you're a good person to answer that. Can hypervisors be mixed?
Yes, they can be mixed. You can install a StarWind on a server which will serve to your hypervisors, to your other hypervisors as a storage. So let's call it sandbox. And then you can have as many servers connected to that storage, and the storage will be provided to each hypervisor. Uh, okay, let's go on to another question. And this question would be, how L1 cache boosts performance? And L2 cache. How L1 cache and L2 cache boost performance?
Okay, great question. So the short story is, well, easily and significantly. Um, as you guys know, we have the tiered caching model. So L1 and L2 cache are presented within the StarWind technology, within the StarWind Virtual SAN product. So L1 is presented by the random access memory, is powered by the random access memory. It can be configured in two modes, write back and write through. So right back, again, making a long story short and not diving too deep into the technical details, right back mode accelerates the write separation and the read separation as well. The L2 cache itself is presented by the using flash, and actually I have a good hint for that I'm going to share a little bit later. So it's presented by the flash memory, flash drives, and it is designed to accelerate the reads only. The hint itself, as I promised, is when actually we have some like good ideas from our users, and the best one here is that the question that I received from a few of our users is like, I have the usual flash drives or flash RAID array, and I have the NVMe flash. So can I use it for the level 2 caching? And the answer is yes, totally. I see no issues with doing that from the technical standpoint. So just go ahead. The trick here, well, the trick about actually any product is that you need to test it before like getting it into production. I'm not saying like buying it or using it for free. Test it before put it into production, regardless the amount of pennies that you will spend on the product and regardless of the product itself. So try out how the level 2 caching based on the NVMe flash gonna work for you. If that is like rock solid for you, then I will be one of the happiest person on this planet. So yeah, thank you for your question. Let's see what we have next.
We have a question from Ryan, which people often ask, is when creating a virtual disk image file on Windows partition, is there any suggested amount of free space you would recommend leaving on the partition? If you are creating an image file, no, you can use all the space and fill it up completely. But in case of LSFS, as we discussed before, LSFS will possibly grow 3 times bigger or not, but it is preferable to leave 3 times more. It is preferable to leave some free space to it. For example, as if it was 1 terabyte device you're creating, it would be preferable to store it on a Windows partition, which would be 3 terabyte whole size. Well, yeah, I guess that's it about the Windows partition. Let's move on to another question. And here is the good one, is what RAID types StarWind recommends using for image files and what for LSFS. And yeah, for image files, which is also called as a common objective file system, we recommend using almost any except from maybe RAID 5, 6, or some very rarely used RAID 60. Yeah, so we recommend using RAID 0, 1, 10 for image files, and that would be completely okay. And for RAID 5, 6, or 60, we recommend using LSFS. Since if you have RAID 5, which has slow writes and fast reads, LSFS by making those small random writes into big sequence of big write blocks, it really boosts the write performance, and eventually you will get a RAID 5 with a performance as if you had a RAID 10.
Okay, thanks. That actually was a kind of really good question. Let's move to the next one. So the one from Alan. Well, it's the best question. I mean, it's not really a comfortable question for me. but I'm a risky guy. So we have experienced problems when shutting down a node in the cluster for maintenance. Is there something we need to do first in StarWind before taking the cluster node offline? The quick answer is no, nothing specific actually. So, you know, Alan, let's make some kind of quick troubleshooting. Maybe we will solve everything right now. So, Alan, get prepared. I'm unmuting you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are online. Alan, do you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome. How are you, Alan?
Good, thank you.
That's really good. And I'm really glad to hear that, obviously. What exactly problems have you faced with StarWind? I mean, what about the symptoms?
Well, we went to take one of the servers offline, basically to replace a RAID controller.
Mm-hmm.
And we failed the cluster node over. Everything seemed to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when we shut the second node physically off, after a few minutes, it lost the drive from the cluster.
Okay, so you have turned off the first node, and then after when the first node came back online, you turned off the second node, correct?
No, the second node actually in this example needed a new RAID card, so we failed it over. We took the second node offline
Mm-hmm.
in the Microsoft Cluster Manager,
Mm-hmm.
and let it you know, we failed over purging the what is it? I forget the terminology there for purging the roles.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And everything seemed fine. But when we actually turned the node 2 off, we seemed to lose that drive in the cluster. It just failed to continue to operate. So I was just wondering if we had missed something there that might have caused that problem, because it ended up bringing the entire system down.
On my experience, the thing I saw something similar when there was some misconfiguration in the SCSI initiator. So probably you should better check that. If you're gonna email to Alice, give me a hint. It's about the MPAL settings. So right now, I'm gonna share with you in the question chat box the email address of Alice. So just drop him a quick email. He's gonna send you over our best practices, and the step-by-step guide that you recommended to follow in order to properly configure the system. And just to check, we're talking about two-node hyper-converged system with a Hyper-V, isn't it?
Actually, we're not using Hyper-V with it currently. We're just basically using it as a clustered mirrored file server. That we do have more drives on each node to set up another RAID array. Mm-hmm. Which is what I'm kind of talking about in my second question. And that array we're going to set aside specifically for Hyper-V VMs, VHDs.
Give me a second, I'm reading through the second question. Okay. So I'm gonna read it for the community, for attendees. Does StarWind in essence provide duplication between two nodes of JBOD? If we lose a single drive in the JBOD 2, does JBOD 1 provide the redundancy? Great question, by the way. So StarWind itself does the RAID 1. So if JBOD 1 is the place where the StarWind is the disk space where the StarWind uses to store the virtual image files, and the JBOD 2 is the one that is used for the partner server of StarWind. Then each JBOD at the end of the day will have the live copy of the data that will be stored on within the virtual disk of StarWind, proprietary virtual disk. So yeah, in case if JBot1 gonna fail, everything should just continue running from the JBot2.
Cool. So in essence, StarWind is providing the RAID 1 layer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's some kind of network software RAID,
Gotcha. Okay. So we don't have to set up RAIDs then within the hardware if we don't want to. We can just go simple JBot and then let StarWind do the RAID config.
That's what I usually recommend to guys. I mean, use RAID to increase the speed, not to give redundancy, because StarWind does redundancy.
Perfect.
StarWind handles it. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so anything else while you're still online?
No, that's pretty much it for me.
Then thank you for a great question. I'm unmuting you and I'm wishing you the perfect weekend that's coming up really soon.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate this forum.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, that was a good talk. So always, do you see any other questions that people want to get answered?
Yeah, I do see some, and well, some of them are already answered, such as as started, I'm reformatting a servers to ESXi 5. Is this a Windows-based solution? I don't think this is a fit for us. It is not a Windows-based solution since you can run it on top of a virtual machine inside of ESXi. Well, you set up a virtual machine which has Windows on it, you install StarWind there, and then you get your StarWind on top of the SXI. The other question, which is kind of interesting, is why can't I use one channel for sync and iSCSI? Actually, you can use one channel for sync and iSCSI, but it is not our best practices because sometimes when you want sync, when your devices are in synchronization and your virtual machines are running on top of that system, that channel is, I mean, like leaning towards one or another, and it's better to segregate them since like one channel 100% work on client requests and the other one will work on the synchronization. And this is also can be done on one channel if you don't have the second one by using virtual LANs. You just set up two network links on one network link and provide StarWind with two virtual channels. Also, here is another great question, which I have just found, and it's why do I need Heartbeat channel in StarWind? Anatoly, what do you think about it?
Well, I would say that I haven't a clue, but that would be a lie. So the heartbeat itself is preventing the split brain issue, and the split brain itself usually assumes having the data get corrupted and wasted, and the system administrator get fired. So, well, probably at the end of the story he will be happy, but not at that moment. So what exactly Heartbeat does is monitoring the health status of the nodes, and when it is especially necessary to have, and especially important, is when the StarWind synchronization channel goes offline. So once the synchronization channel goes offline, the heartbeat starts pinging the nodes. They are finding out that they are both online, and sync channel, which means the sync channel is down, and one of the nodes is shutting down itself, the other ones continue running, everybody's happy, system administrator has his job, probably he has got a promotion, and he is definitely happy in this kind of stories. So yeah, and oh, Alan has another good question. Good job. So, what is the best recommended practice for location of the witness drive? Can this also be hosted by the StarWind software? Alice, your opinion?
My opinion on that is it definitely should be hosted by StarWind because, well, the drive is something which is quorum drive is the most important part of the cluster in my opinion, since if you lose your quorum drive, you lose your entire cluster. And if you have like 500 machines in your cluster, you definitely don't want to lose those. And yeah, you just create a 1 GB device in StarWind and connect it and provide a quorum to your cluster. But there's a trick about it. We are actually, so for all those devices that you're connecting, is it a data store or CSV in StarWind in terms of iSCSI initiator connections, you're connecting it locally by loopback IP address, and you're connecting it to your partner node. And the same is done on the second node. And in terms of quorum connection, we recommend you actually connecting quorum on one node locally only and on second one as well. So there are no partner connections at all. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks. Great answer, actually. And so I've got the question for me. The question from Kima, who left us. So, what are the storage limitation on the StarWind Virtual SAN license? Um, so, I will rephrase it to make the question easier. Are there any storage limitation for, according to StarWind licensing? Mostly no. So, free version doesn't have the storage capacity limitation. Data center itself, data center license doesn't have any storage limitation. Moreover, data center, it's like all in one. I mean, it includes unlimited number of installation of StarWind nodes, so why should it have any kind of limitation? And we also have the enterprise license, which covers unlimited storage capacity as well. So the only license that actually have the storage limitation is the standard, and it goes up to 4 nodes as far as I remember. Which does the job for a major part of our users actually. Yeah, it's actually kind of really good question. Thank you for taking that. And you, Alice, you've got the next question from Alan. Alan, Alice.
Yeah, so the question sounds like, can the size of an image file be reduced or increased after initial configuration? Well, it definitely can be increased if you're using image file. You just right click on it, say expand, you choose the amount on which you want to expand this image file, and then you expand it in StarWind Management Console, you expand it in Disk Management, and voila, everything's done. LSFS unfortunately cannot be expanded, but yeah, it cannot be expanded. Speaking about reducing the size of the image files, they actually can be reduced, but not in such an easy way as increased. So yes, you can browse your image file, you can grab all required, all data that you need from that image file, you can store it somewhere, and then remove existing image file from StarWind Management Console. This works with LSFS and any device at all, and then you create new device which has the size that you require, and then you move all those files you've just copied out away from it, you move them back to that new device which has the required size, and that's it. But yeah, it's definitely much easier to increase it than reduce the. And yeah, there is another great question which sounds like, is there any way to you guys configuring not only StarWind itself, but hypervisor as well. Anatoly, what can you say about it?
Um, no problem, actually. And actually, that's a really great question. So yeah, first of all, StarWind actually does a great job from the quality of service standpoint, in my opinion, and I'm really proud to be sure about it. So why exactly I'm like completely sure that we do that? Uh, StarWind works on top of something. I'm assuming RAID and the Windows, and it works for something and the hypervisor, right? So we usually provide the at least like general recommendation for people who are like referring to the configuration of something that is not only StarWind. So we, as you guys saw today, we provide recommendation for the RAID configuration. Uh, we could go actually more deeply technical, and also we cover the hypervisor part itself. So yeah, by the way, we're gonna move this thing to the premium support option a little bit later. But interesting notice here is that StarWind has the services, well, we call it remote administration services. So what exactly the thing is, if you guys not sure how to configure some part of your environment, and let's be honest, that sometimes happens. For example, one of my colleagues, he jumped on, he worked as a system administrator in one company, and when he was hired, he got some kind of like brief introduction to the environment, and in a couple of days he like understood that he actually didn't know quite a lot about the system. So what he did is like looked for a guy who would know that part that he doesn't know. So what we do is we want to be that guy who helps. We provide the services that allows you to like don't waste time, and let's again be honest, don't waste the budget on the configuration of the part of on the configuration of some part of your environment, or maybe even entire environment. So, and actually we can do everything, like not only StarWind related. We can configure the Exchange server, we can configure the mail server, we can configure the database, we can maintain all of the above mentioned, and not only the above mentioned. So we can do actually everything here. And that is actually really great for everybody in the system. I mean, the first guess of yours probably will be like, hey, who the hell need this? Maybe it's system administrator, right? Yeah, that's the first guy, obviously. If he needs some help, he will be interested in getting those remote administration services. The second option here will be the surprise resellers. Why exactly? They can resell this offer to their clients and the customers. Also, the bosses of the companies will be like really satisfied with that, because they don't need to pay taxes for the people that is not hired actually, not physically, right? So everybody is happy in the system, and thank you for addressing that. Okay, so probably we got the last question less, or less. I'm pretty sure that you would like to answer that. So the question is SAN redundancy RAID 1 or agreed?
Yep. So RAID 1 is actually redundancy because you have two copy of files in two different places, and when one copy gets broken, corrupted, eaten by an alligator, whatever.
Yeah, well, eating by alligator is a good story. Yeah, so you actually gave me a good idea to talk about. StarWind can be placed not only within the same building, uh, but it can be placed in a separate building. So the trick here is that StarWind can provide disaster recovery site as well. And addressing the question, yeah, StarWind does the RAID 1 as I said, software network grade 1. Okay, so that was the last question, and we have a hard stop in like a few minutes. So I would like to thank you all, guys. Thank you, Oles, for attending this webinar. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Thank you, Alan, for a great question. Thank you, Jeff, for attending and a good question as well. Brian, I mean, everybody, I really appreciate you all guys coming here. Again, if you will have some additional questions, my mailbox is always open. Please email to av@starwind.com. And thank you all. And Oles, it's your last word right now, so fire it away.
So yeah, thank you. Thank all of you for coming here. It was really nice to talk to you in such a way, and I've spent my time really great answering your questions here, and I hope we'll have a chance to talk in future. Have a nice day. Bye bye.